Hello everyone, my name is Robert Pratten and I create adventures, and in fact our mission for the company is to make everyone's life an adventure, and the way that we do that is by creating participatory experiences, and these experiences blend the digital world and the real world, so you might call them mixed reality experiences. And the mindset needed for this is we treat the world as a storytelling canvas. So we don't limit our stories to a particular screen or to a book. And this is what's meant often by transmedia storytelling. So we tell stories across multiple platforms. So as a company, we have a technology. We established ourselves to create this technology, and it's called Conducttr, because like the conductor of an orchestra, it orchestrates the user experience as they move across different platforms. So the platform learns about the learner or the consumer or the participant, the player, and it tries to adapt and keep making an experience more and more personalised to them, so to maintain their engagement. That's the key thing. So I'm going to give an example of something that we did last year, and this was for Canal Plus, which is a broadcaster in Spain, and this was an experience that we created for the Game of Thrones. So this experience was like fantastically successful. So normally positive sort of brand sentiment increases from these types of things are measured in single digits. So the fact that we got 42% was like, unheard of really. And what you're seeing here is a live experience with 240 people from the Facebook page that were invited to take part in the shooting of the commercial for the upcoming series. This was an actor, this is our actor that we'd scripted, and what he's doing is he's calling them to war. He's saying that, war's coming and you will have to choose a side, like one of the great families from the Game of Thrones, and you have to fight for a territory. And from this live experience, when people left, they were given a scroll, and it said, if you see this character, he's a wanted man and you should report him. So people were encouraged to email in and tell their stories about this particular character. And then we shifted from real world to online, and we had a massively multiplayer role-playing game on Twitter. So using Twitter, you could, of course, you could fight people, you could attack them, but you could also seduce them, you could make friends with them and then betray them. And what would happen midweek is that you could go into certain retail outlets like the Spanish equivalent of Smith's, and you would see a story on sort of designated sort of pillars, and it might say something like, here lies a merchant that's been attacked by bandits, and you look around his body and you find 5 gold coins or 2 bronze coins, and with that came a code. You put that code into your phone and it unlocked virtual currency that you could then spend on potions and shields and so on. And this ran out over 10 weeks while the TV series was on. And at the end, we had a live performance in the centre of Madrid, and the winner of the game was flown from the Balearic Islands to be crowned the King of the Andals and the First Men. And the timing was pretty good on this, because 2 weeks earlier, the real King of Spain had abdicated. So that was quite a nice PR boost for us. So what I've shown in this is the way that a story has been told across lots of platforms, across Twitter. In the video there, you saw that there was Facebook engagement, where every week we invited people to take part in the story, to invent their own weapon one week. You know, how much would it cost? You know, what's the sort of attack strength of it? Another time was take a photograph, you know, with our logo in the local sort of place and so on. But we also tell these stories across other sort of more serious things. So this is an experience that's intended for students aged about 14 to 17, it says above 12 here, and they role play being executives of a space cargo company. And what happens at the start of this experience is one of their rocket ships crashes into a local village, and they have to decide what they're going to do about that. And each of the students is given a role, so they might be CEO, the CFO and so on, and different stakeholders around this event come in to give their opinion. They might be on social media, they might be through this web app. So we'll have someone from the union, someone that's an environmental activist and so on. We have a client in Brazil that uses our technology for recruitment, and what they've done is they've created a business world. But what it is, it's a business game about a business that's going bust, and the participants have to decide, they have to collaborate and decide how it's going to sort of solve itself. And what's nice about this is they say people lie on their CV, but let's see how they perform in a real situation. So we've got different stories that test for innovation or results orientation, and as this story runs out, it takes about 2 hours. There are moderators and observers that are looking for different behaviours. So on their console it will say the participants have just learned that Gennaro is embezzling funds, and then we look to see how these different, and they sort of check off different behaviours that they're expecting. So it's much more accurate than just a CV. And we're currently doing a project with the Ministry of Defence. So war stories are really important as a learning kind of tool, things that went well, things that didn't go so well, particularly like cultural stories about the way, say if there were troops engaged in Afghanistan, and because we don't all use the same cultural hand signals, certain things didn't go off quite so well as they could have. And so what we're doing actually is building an instructor dashboard to monitor and assess servicemen and women as they go through training, both field exercise and sort of individual tasks. And where we're going with this is to create like an adaptive training system. So to take that personalisation that we've done in entertainment and these other things and apply it more directly to this type of training. So to look at stories, I think the key thing, and Dale touched on it in his talk, is that they really work on the imagination. So in this, if we were to break down this, I could tell you that there was a cardboard box with a hole cut out of it and a kid inside. But we're trying to piece together that. What we see is a rocket. We see somebody going on an adventure, because our minds are not happy with these kind of disparate pieces of information. We don't handle randomness very well. And so we always try to connect things into a story. So just read this. What's powerful about this story is what's not on the screen. So our imagination is reading in the white space. And so good stories, the way that they engage people, is by not laying it all out on the table. One of the issues I have with TV actors is that, you know, in the script, they, you know, I must be angry, and they're like, whoa, I'll get you, you know, like, whereas if you look at a good movie actor, there's some ambiguity in their performance, and you're trying to read in and try to understand behind their eyes what it is, what emotion they're going through, and this is why this story works particularly well. So there are thousands actually of women on eBay selling their old shoes, And they're probably the type of shoes that you could buy at a charity store for a couple of pence. But here they invest them with fantasy. And people buy into that fantasy. So though it's just, when you get it, it's just a shoe, presumably, not that I've ever bought them. But for the predominantly men who buy these things, they're buying into the whole fantasy, the whole illusion of that. And just to stick with eBay, there was an experiment that's done, and you can look it up, it's called Significant Objects. This is just a tile with the number 4 on it, and the original price was $1. And what this project did was it took everyday objects and it gave them a story. So it bought them from eBay and then it relisted them with a story. So I don't know what the particular story was on this, but it might be this was from Colonel such and such in the Raj, and this was handed down from his father to his son, and this took, this went on the such and such a voyage, and so on and so forth. And so from an original price, the product was exactly the same. The only difference was the listing with a story. It sold for $88. And in fact, they spent about $128 on junk and sold it for $3,600. And the only difference was the story that wrapped around that product. So this just illustrates really the powerful nature of the storytelling and how we want to invest in these things, how we're drawn to these things. Now, a key thing about storytelling is that the story is relevant, and that it's relevant, and that it really resonates with people. And the way that you can approach this is through your characters. So this meerkat character has been one of the most successful successful campaigns ever. And what's good about a good character is it has flaws. It has like a backstory that you can see that there's more to it than might be on the screen at that time. And using characters in advertising and in branding is a very common thing to do. The Geico gecko is a common character, and people see that character as representing the brand, and that's how they connect through, especially something like insurance, which is, what is insurance? Aren't all insurance companies the same? They don't have a tangible product that you can feel. And so this is a good way to kind of communicate those values. And the Old Spice Man, again, very successful because people could relate to this type of character. The reason that TV shows do so well is because of the characters, that you could take these characters and they have their own spin-off shows, and they go from season to season, because people invest in the characters, because they connect with them. They either see their own flaws or they see other people's flaws. Now, an important thing, the flip side to stories, is the delivery of the story. It's like two sides of the same coin. And the delivery of the story is something that we get involved in quite a lot, because we are creating experiences. We're creating stories that play out in the real world. So we can't assume that somebody's in a particular place and time. So if you say, you create a film, you might say, is somebody going to watch this at home? Are they going to watch this in the cinema? And you might design the movie to be one of those particular types of movies, something that people are going to watch as a download or something that people are going to watch in a cinema. But when you create an experience, when you create a story that's supposed to play out in the real world, we really need to pay attention to what people are actually doing with their real time. Are they on a commute? Are they sat in the office? Are they sat at home? Is it a weekend? And so when we think about experiences and storytelling across multiple platforms, we don't think so much about the platform as we do an emotional journey. And so for us, transmedia storytelling is taking the audience on a journey that goes moment to moment. And we think about the emotion every time somebody comes to a particular touch point. Every time we've got something in the story that we want to convey, we're thinking about the emotion. Now I'm going to finish the talk with a couple of quite different examples. Now, is there anybody here that likes sex games? We've just finished the sex game for the Public Health Institute in Mexico, and one of the issues that they were trying to address is that so many men who have sex with other men don't know if they have HIV or not. And so this, if you don't know if you have HIV, that means you might be having unprotected sex, and obviously they want to control the spread of HIV. So the people that sponsored this project thought that using gamification, using a game, might be a good way to reach out to young men in order to sort of engage with them in this issue. So the way the game plays out is you sort of make different avatars and you try to chat them up. And if you're successful in the chat up, then you go through to the sex room. And when you're in the sex room, you get to get different implements and you can sort of drag them onto other parts of the other chap's body. And if you manage to engage in lots of sex acts without sort of heightening your risk of a disease and so on, then you get badges and you get points. And one of the key things that we introduced through our technology was the ability to track what you did online in the game with, did you actually go to a clinic and get screened? So with the sort of the web app that we had, there was a VIP pass which allowed them to go to the front of the queue if they went into a clinic, and the doctors were able to get a one-time use code which they gave to the the patient, I guess, and the patient would put that into the phone, and that would verify that they were there at that time. They couldn't share that code because once it was used, that was it. And in the game, when people signed up, they were allocated to different groups, and each group had different set of game mechanics. So what this experience has just finished, and now the client is sort of sifting through the data to see if there's a correlation between the different game mechanics and the propensity to go and get checked in. Now, one of the things that I felt was missing on this experience was a really good story, because it was really, the intention was to really focus on the game. And one of the things that we're discussing for the next phase is to introduce a story, and the story gives us like a continuity over a number of days. And what we can do, what I'm showing here, is how somewhat like a motivation curve. So I've stolen this from someone called BJ Fogg, who looks at like people's motivation and when is the right time to call them to action. If you want to change someone's behaviour, you should choose your moments. So for example, like an example that he gives would be, if someone wants to lose weight, when they're highly motivated, get them to sign up for a personal trainer or get them to join a gym, something that's going to have a big impact in the longer term. If they're not very motivated, just get them to do something very simple, because if they're not, like, I don't know, eat less, for a particular meal, or, take an apple instead of something else, rather than expect them to run a 5K or something, because they're not at that point. And what we can do with the technology, as people interact, you can start to infer what point of this sort of motivation curve they're on, and then send them different assignments, release different pieces of story that might inspire them to take a different course of action. So anyway, so this is something that we're looking at. And what this segues into for me is this sort of the way we see the world. So down in the bottom is me in sort of female clothing. I'm in the real world and I'm in a physical world. And often lots of health apps, when they look to change people's behaviour, they introduce this idea of a digital coach or a digital buddy. And I see lots of training programs that really focus on the factual, and they don't branch into the emotion. They don't really deal in story enough, because they're so keen to get across the learning points. And so it is with a lot of these health apps. But when you introduce a story world, it allows me to imagine how things might be different. And actually, when we make it participatory, I can play as another me. I can sort of project myself into a future to see what that might look like. And what I've shown here, this hole, is a portal that takes me from my real everyday world into this imaginary world. And great stories all have this portal. Either you go on a long journey across the sea, so you leave behind what you know and you find this fantastical land, or you might open a wardrobe and you step from like the mundane into the sort of mystical, or you might go on a long train journey. So lots of stories use this portal as a way to transition between the two things. And once you're in this new world, then you can decide exactly what the right chemistry is for that. You can decide, and good science fiction stories talk about the issues that, you know, often political or economic issues that we have today, but they tell it in the future and allow us to sort of dismiss some of our prejudices because now this is science fiction. And an area where storytelling works quite well could be in scenario planning. So I've met people that spend a fortune on scenario planning. They get lots of experts in a room. They come up with these different possible futures. And then this gets disseminated in a brochure, which goes on people's desk, and then it goes into the bin and no one ever reads it. So there's all this like good work that's been done that no one ever engages with. And what you could do with this is tell a participatory story that puts someone in the shoes of somebody living in future story 3. And maybe this is a time traveler that's able to hop between these different future stories. And so you can really compare what these scenarios might look like for our business by doing it much more interactive. And so this idea about trying to break away really from the normal delivery of the message, I think is really important, and it's illustrated with this final story. So again, so we're working with a big consultancy company right now, looking at a serious game for financial compliance. So a big issue with compliance training is that nobody wants to do it. No one wants to go for 2 hours or 2 days or a week to listen to a load of boring rules and regulations. But what we can do is we can engage people in a story that fits in with their normal day-to-day life. Why not send them a text message when they're on their commute? Why not send them an email when they're in their daily job sat at their desk? This email just comes through the normal email client along with the other emails, except that we're tracking exactly how they respond to that. And we can look across different departments and different roles, different teams in that client to see how people are reacting, taking that seriously. And we can make the story about the need for compliance issues much more energizing rather than just something boring that people have to do. Now, what I would encourage you to do is go to our website and check this out, because this is a storyboard about a health game, and this is somebody that sees the story unfold during their normal day-to-day activity. So this guy wakes up, he gets a message telling him that so in his mind, in the story, he's a colonist on one of Jupiter's moons, and he gets a text message to say something's gone badly wrong and he needs to make a decision, otherwise there's not going to be any food. And what we've done is we've connected this to biometrics. So the guy goes to the bathroom as he would on every other day, except we're going to analyse his urine and we're going to send him a different notification based on the analysis of that urine. Except instead of telling him that he's not hydrated, we're making it a story issue. We're saying that, you know, your garden's going to die unless you sort of replenish the water. So we're finding a way to actually integrate the thing that we want him to be mindful of with this engaging story. So this is my final slide. So we're looking at this layered approach. So you know, all our stuff that we do with entertainment experiences is engagement, and we can make training very engaging by using great stories with great characters and telling those stories at the right time that fits in with somebody's lifestyle, which fits in with their work. And we can bring in these different sort of training models and different models of memory so that people are reminded at the right time so that they don't forget them. So thank you very much for listening.